Welcome back. Tonight we conclude our week-long look at the big questions facing every NSIC football team. David Brown back once again to break it all down, and we will finish things off with the top 4 teams last season from the NSIC South. So starting with Wayne State, like several other teams, they're transitioning at quarterback from a longtime starter. So who is the favorite, David, to replace Zach Osborne?
Well, for the time being, it's Aaron Blisle. He'll be a junior in 2018. He saw his first college action ever last season, filling in for Osborne when he was hurt with a foot injury. Didn't have the greatest numbers, completing less than 50% of his passes, but he did take care of the ball. 8 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions in 6 games. Head coach Dan McLaughlin says Blisle stepped up his game during spring practice, looked every bit the part of a starting quarterback. Passing is key for the Wildcats. They're a little thin at running back right now, and they had the 4th most passing yards in the NSIC last season, so Aaron Blisle will definitely need to step up for the Wildcats in 2018.
Well, you mentioned how critical the passing game is, but will the Wildcats, they have those weapons on offense to help that part of the game?
They will, and one of them is actually going to come as a surprise. They're going to get Nate Rogers back at wide receiver. Rogers was assumed to be a senior in 2017. That is not the case. He played in 2013, was academically ineligible for the next 2 years, played in 2016 and last season in 2017. He got another year. He's back for one more go-around, and that's going to help the Wildcats tremendously. He's a big 6'5" receiver with speed and red zone awareness. He'll be a difference maker, along with Willie Walton in that slot receiver position for Wayne State. Experienced wideouts will undoubtedly help Aaron Blisle in his transition into being a starting quarterback, so having Nate Rogers back for technically his 6th season certainly doesn't hurt.
Well, switching gears to defense, Wayne State last year gave up the 2nd most passing yards in the Northern Sun, so can they shore that up, I guess?
I think they can, and I think that despite giving up a bunch of yards last season, Wayne State was great at creating pressure and creating turnovers. It's simply about limiting those big plays. You look at guys in the secondary like Aaron Wright, Odessa Clark, Emil Hope right here with the interception. Those are solid veterans in that final line of defense. Up front, they've got a big lineman in Xavier Graham. He had a great spring. That pass rush is going to be necessary to give opposing quarterbacks less time to throw. All in all, the Wildcats have a solid team with skilled playmakers on both sides of the ball. They gave away some games late last season. They finished 6-5, could have been 7-4, 8-3. If they can solidify things this upcoming season, this could be a 7-8 win team and maybe even contend for a playoff spot in that South Division.
All right, well, moving on to our second W team, Winona State. They made the playoffs for the first time in a decade with a balanced attack last season, so nearly the same amount of rushing yards as passing yards in 2017. Can they keep that up?
They can, and part of the reason is because all of their key rushers are returning in 2018. Toward the end of the season, you saw how they can utilize different athletes like Devon Moore. You saw the speed and the power of running backs like Eric Berth and Javian Roebuck. The ability to change pace and still have the same level of production is pretty remarkable. Berth and Roebuck, they were their top 2 running backs last year. Each of them had 7 touchdowns. They finished the season separated by just 12 yards, and both of them still averaged more than 5 yards per carry. Collectively, Winona State has a rushing attack that works at multiple levels. That's dangerous to see if you're an opposing NSIC defense.
Offensively, it sounds like they can keep it up, but defensively, they were no slouch either. Plus 12 in turnover margin last year. Can the defense continue to create that?
They can, and they're going to have a little bit of a hard time because they're losing the Defensive Player of the Year and safety Andrew Spencer, but there are returners at all 3 levels of that Warrior defense that can wreak havoc. Linebacker, you've got Nick Pridgeon and Trey Telez. Secondary, you've got Cole Moncton and Romario Gale. Up front, you've got guys like Michael Gomez and Cale Stensgaard. They need to be a little more consistent, only because if there's one knock, it's that the Warriors didn't get to the quarterback as much. Only 24 sacks last season. That was in the lower half of the NSIC, but Kelly, they match those 24 sacks with 24 interceptions. They have the athletes to make other teams pay, especially when it comes to creating turnovers.
All right, well, final question for the Warriors, and we haven't really asked this question with anyone else, but could special teams be a big factor for Winona State this coming season?
If there's any team that special teams can be a factor, it is Winona State, and that's because of one man, Jake Ballou. He's going to be a junior next season, and quite simply, he is the most dangerous returner in the NSIC. Winona State led the conference last season in punt returns and kickoff returns. Who do you think was responsible for all that? This guy right here, Jake Ballou. He had nearly 1,000 yards just on kick and punt return yardage alone. 2 touchdowns. He's simply got a knack for special teams, a weapon that can be used at wide receiver as well. But don't discount his impact when Winona State plays next season on special teams.
1,000 yards. Oh my god.
In kick and punt return yards. That's pretty remarkable.
That's awesome.
Just for that. Wide receiving yards didn't come close, but he's going to be utilized there
gosh.
next season as well.
All right, well, stay here, David.
Stay
2
put.
more teams. And you stay here too, because when we come back, David breaks down our final 2 Northern Sun teams, USF and Minnesota State.